Hi, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of Rebooting the Music Mainframe, our symposium on all things music and technology. My name is Maud Salvi. I'm the executive director of the Sled Island Music and Arts Festival. And this symposium was created in partnership with our friends at Byta, which is a platform to send and receive high-quality audio files securely. Both of our organizations are firm believers in educating musicians and music workers in order to empower them to better their career, and with a big emphasis on new technologies and how to leverage them. And another important thing for us in presenting that symposium was that we wanted it to be free and easily accessible to all. And so for that, we have our funders to thank: the Canada Council for the Arts, the Government of Canada, Factor, and Canada's private radio broadcasters. So our discussion tonight specifically narrows down on new technology and technological progress and its impact on music making. Certainly, technology has made a lot of things easier, but as we will hear from our various panelists, it may also have created either new barriers or like more challenges that we haven't really given thought to yet. So there's definitely a lot to talk about, and we're really excited to have them. So to guide us in this conversation tonight, we have Erin G, who will be our moderator, and then our panelists, Anthony Albanese, MJ Jacob, and Lisa Kakos. Before I pass it on to them, I just want to plug tomorrow's panel. So at noon, we have a presentation of a white paper on the state of music sharing. And tomorrow night at 6 p.m., we'll be talking about the state of virtual events and what is the music. I was going to say live music, but I guess recorded music, virtual events, what all of that is going to look like in the near future. You can tune in to any of the remainder of the panels happening this week using the exact same Zoom link, so that's pretty easy. And finally, if you have questions about anything that our panelists are going to talk about, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll try to address them all at the end of the conversation. And on that note, I'll leave it with you, Erin.
Great, and thank you so much for that introduction, and welcome everyone to this great panel about technology, music, and identity. I am coming to you live from Chichage, also known as Montreal, which is situated on the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka people. I guess that I would like to, before we begin, I thought that it would be nice to make it clear, because this is a conversation about not only technology, but representation, and also like this is a group of people that have come together to talk about themselves as quote unquote underrepresented. I only put the quotes not to devalue that term, but just to say that this is maybe contested, we will see. In recent years, the public conversation and awareness about difference and privilege has shifted dramatically, especially due to the influence of, well, there's lots of activist movements, but there's the trans right activists, Black Lives Matter, and of course, murdered and missing Indigenous women. These recent conversations have changed minds, attitudes, and industries. The leading authorities on these changes are the people who live with difference, those who do not or cannot identify with role models and industry norms that overrepresent whiteness and masculinity. These differences are complicated, and I think we should always fight for nuance and complication personally, because that's how we live. And also these differences show up through ability, sexuality, social class, neurological function, and/or language. Difference is written not only across our bodies, but in our social experiences, how we work and play. some of these differences are visible and some aren't. Some we want to talk about, others we don't. But because this conversation is anchored equally in technology as well as in our identities, I just want to invite everyone to introduce themselves in terms of how they self-identify their difference or which perspectives that you are bringing to the table to this conversation. So this gives us a chance not only to honor who we are, but also to provide more awareness and understanding of where we come from or what lived experience we bring to the table for everybody here. So on that note, I will start. I am a settler, white woman. I am straight. I guess I'm well educated. This is where I come from. Hey, y'all.
Cool, I guess I can go next. Hello, my name's MJ. I am South Indian. I was born and raised in Alabama. My family is from an area called Kerala, India. It's a state in India, and that is where my heritage is. Yeah, got lots of love for it. The language that we speak at home is called Malayalam. I am a straight male, and I am in love with music and technology. So.
I'll go next.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. I knew it was going to happen.
At some point. Okay, yeah, I'm Lisa, straight white female. I'm from Michigan originally. I live in Nashville, Tennessee now. I think I can bring to the conversation the fact that, we'll get into it in the future, but I tend to find myself attracted to, I guess, male-dominated instruments and groups of people. So I'm one of the boys a lot.
And my name is Anthony. I'm from Niagara Falls, Ontario, now living in Montreal. I'm a straight white male, and I am an educator and music lover. I play instruments, produce music, and I love talking about it. So I'm really happy that I was invited here to do that.
Great. Welcome all. So in electronic music, there are some significant barriers for some folks. And also there's a lot of ways in. There's a lot of ways to fall in love with music. So recognizing that there's lots of paths to becoming a music professional, two of the most common ones are either through academia, like the conservatory system of learning how to play an instrument, or university, on one hand, and on the other hand, through gigging, jamming, working your way up the music industry in maybe a more DIY fashion. So I was just like to invite all three of you to talk about your experiences in falling in love with music and professionalizing, and what you found challenging and what you found rewarding. MJ, do you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like my music career kind of was forced upon me in a weird way, and also it's bittersweet. And by that I mean just lots of tragedy had happened to me growing up. When I was 11 years old, dad was removed from the family, and essentially, having a father figure being removed from my life was relatively tough as an 11-year-old kid, because like you just kind of have typically your father as a role model and things of that nature. So as a kid, I kind of immediately started to gravitate towards hip hop music, because lots of the hip hop artists that I listened to, like back in the day, Kanye West, Eminem, Jay-Z, even like Linkin Park, for that like fusion of rock and rap, had a lot of like starter from the bottom kind of mentality. And it really helped inspire me as a kid to be like, look, even though the cards you were handed aren't ideal, you still can be someone in life. So it almost felt like these rappers ended up kind of becoming mentors to me. And what do you do when you enjoy something, right? You try to imitate it. So I started recording these tracks on this MP3 player that had a microphone on it. And they were really bad. Would put them up on MySpace and all that good stuff. Like had my older brother and sister adding it to their page to like show support. But anyways, I started to get deeper and deeper into it, and like as I started to get my own job, make my own money and things of that nature, was able to start buying a little bit more music equipment and things of that nature. And at this point, I would say, over 10 years later, it started off extremely therapeutic outlet for me making music. And now it's at a point where I'm extremely grateful that people are even willing to listen to anything I have to write, have to record, or have to produce. So I would say that kind of is how I got into it, kind of by force, but very grateful for that force at the end of the day.
Lisa, I think you are the next one. We don't always need to go in order, but since no one, I'll just make it more clear.
Sounds good. That helps. Cool. So I guess I'm an artist and an educator. I guess I make music and I teach people how to make music. And I got my start, I guess, on the artist side of things. I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I play a few different instruments decently well, I guess. My first was trumpet. I got my start with music in 6th grade band, and I still play every day. And I also spend a lot of time playing the drum kit. And then I'm a songwriter, and I like to write and produce and record my own music. I do a lot of that here in this room. And I studied music in college, and I met a band, and I joined a band while I was there. And so I would study music theory. I have a master's degree in music theory, so I did the classical music thing during the week, and I played rock and roll on the weekends. We've probably played 1,000 shows together. A lot of time on stage in the van, and on the education side of things, I teach at an audio college here in Nashville. Spend a lot of time with Ableton and Logic. I teach music theory for producers and electronic music production. And I teach also with a recording community called OmniSound Project. I'm a core faculty member with them, and I teach similar things there. And I also do a lot of work with songwriters, teaching rhythm for songwriters. I have a course for that. So I guess that's a lot of my musical background. And I think the part of my brain that loves music theory is the part of my brain that loves production and just putting music together.
Cool. Thanks. This is a really, musically diverse panel already. So that's pretty cool. Anthony?
Yeah. So, I got started in my teens just playing in bands, meeting up with people on the internet. And I still keep in touch with those people today. Music has brought me so many cool relationships that we experience it together, and then we're able to kind of keep that relationship going. And it's been amazing. But I went to college. I did the school thing a few times now. So I went to college for jazz. That was the best experience I've ever had learning. Bridging the gap between actually playing guitar and the music theory was the hardest part for me. And it ended up happening after college, I went to play on the cruise lines on Princess and Carnival. And while I was playing, I would have little epiphanies of oh, that's what my teacher meant, just starting to slowly digest the information. And it was really great to be able to actually apply that information, because I know a lot of people get bogged down with music theory, but it can really blossom into a really useful tool once you have it second nature. So I went to after that I went to York University. I got a university degree, played in a band, a Celtic band, playing a few instruments like mandolin, banjo, and guitar. We toured around for a bit. And then I went to McGill finally to get my education and music degree. I taught high school for a year, and then I realized that wasn't for me. And then I found my home right now at Lander, doing marketing for them, and specifically building content for people to learn about Lander's products, and as well as to learn music. So I run the YouTube channel there. And we recently, we just got our 100,000 subscribers. So that was that was a huge moment for us, since we started around 10, I think, since I got there. So we're just making content to help and inspire people, and, make it more accessible for them to start creating.
So I guess,
Sure, yeah.
Have you, has there ever been some moments that kind of surprised you, in your journey to in professionally, was there a moment where you kind of felt there was something, different about you, or have you felt like actually you were so far so good?
Yeah, for me, I feel like the most surprising moments in both music and technology is typically when you're just about to quit and or just about to like say this isn't worth it or I'm not good enough or whatever. Typically, if you push for like one more week, something crazy is going to happen. Like that has been my journey, I would say, really regularly speaking. I'll never forget this one moment. I released the song, and as a musician, it is how do I put this? It's I would love to say I just do it for the music and the love of the music. That is very true. But being a human, there still is a side where I'm like, I want people to actually listen to my music too, right? Like numbers kind of matter to me. And again, I'm trying not to sound vain with that point, but it's more so like, what's the point of music if no one's going to listen to it? So I remember I was releasing on music on Spotify, and I put this one song out that I really put my heart into. And the reason for that was it was actually dedicated to my older sister, and she has really been through hell and back. And, kind of put myself out on the line, put her out on the line, and just like opened up my heart. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is going to be so crazy when I drop this song. Hopefully it's going to be impactful and like it's going to, create a positive impact to others that went through a similar story of like sexual abuse and things of that nature. Anyways, fast forward like a month later, and you know how Spotify says you have less than 1,000 streams, and that like kind of metric is there just taunting you. That's what it was at. So I'll never forget this moment. I was actually at church this one Sunday, and I was like, you know what? I made $100 off of music up to that point, and the church basket came around, and I put $100 in that church basket, and I was like, you know what, God, I think I'm done with music. I don't want to do this anymore, and like just take all the money I've ever made with music. Fast forward literally 7 days later, and the song that I had created got posted on Post Malone radio within Spotify. And I woke up the next morning to over 200,000 streams, and then it started to slowly snowball from there. But it's just so funny because, like, again, I don't think you should ever get caught up in the numbers, but that's an example for me where, like, just ones of dozens where I was like one step away from quitting. But if you just keep your head up, keep pushing, keep the faith, I think really cool things can happen.
Anybody else have anything to add?
You were asking, what has there been something that has surprised you?
Well, it's kind of my like gentle way of saying like, well, so if we're here to talk about diversity and difference, has your diversity ever surprised you?
I will say that,
but I'm happy just to keep the conversation rolling. I'm just saying that was my secret.
I will say, I'm very grateful. As a female, I have been given a lot of opportunities for being a female. There are a lot of times where I think it can be, there are, I guess, you get judged, you get stereotyped, whatever, for certain things. There have been plenty of situations. I think being in a group of guys all the time, I was the only woman in my band. But for example, I was always just one in the group. And it's always been kind of a pleasant surprise for me when people are interested in me as an individual and my voice and what I have to say, where I'm actually most comfortable kind of taking a back seat sometimes. But, as a woman in the industry, a lot of times it's been really neat to see people making an effort, I guess. I play with a few bands here in Nashville, and a lot of people will deliberately hire women. And I play trumpet, and there are only like 3 of us in this town, 3 women trumpet players. So just that as an example, it's always really neat to see the people that support each other in that area, I guess. People that want to give the chances. It never ceases to make me feel really good about the opportunities that are out there.
If there's, I don't know. Anthony, do you have anything to add? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, in terms of like challenges for me, like I've never had to deal with like those type of things. Obviously, I'm but I mean, I think it's more accepting of myself that has been my biggest hurdle. And that seems selfish to say now that I'm saying it, but I always had like, even like I do like cruise ship performances, and then I'd be like, that wasn't good enough, and I'd be really hard on myself. And it like took so many years to just kind of chill and just like be like, oh, that was just that. And I had to go through so many disasters to kind of become numb to it. Um, and so I guess the takeaway from all of that is like, perfectionism, you have to just realize when you're being a perfectionist, and realize that it's okay to make mistakes and learn from them. I think that's the most important thing. If you don't learn from your mistakes, they'll just eat you alive. And it took me so long to realize that. So
Well, thanks for sharing.
yeah.
So I'm gonna like flip the script a little and start talking about some geeky things. What is the most useful or interesting tool that you've been working with lately in your practice? And I have this add-on, is it AI? Is it a game changer for you? So let's talk about your favorite toys.
I could, I mean, do you mean like to generate ideas, or just anything really that's technology?
It's your chance to geek out.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I mean, before I joined Lander, I always did music production when I was performing, and like I would kind of do it on the side, and I never took it seriously. And then I started getting really into it and getting really into sample libraries and realism with sample libraries, and the amount of customization you can do to those sample libraries to make it sound like a real huge orchestra. And so I'm all about these huge sessions with like multiple contact libraries and routing them to different tracks and having like a full orchestra and making it sound as real as I can, and like trying to fool people almost. And that's kind of, it's so much fun to write with those types of tools, because you can really surprise yourself what you can get away with now. And that wasn't the case maybe like 7 years ago. There wasn't that much available, and it's just unbelievable the amount of stuff that's out there now in terms of resampling instruments and how real you can get without having to play an instrument.
Cool. MJ, I know that you wanted to talk about the AI.
Yeah, for sure. So I think a general point about AI, right, is what you put in is what you get out. So generally speaking, the reason why I love interacting with AI in my music workflow is unlike Lisa and Anthony, I commend you two for having that depth in music theory and things of that nature. I never actually got into music theory myself. I've always been a rapper. I've always been like making lyrics and recording and doing the audio engineering and things of that nature, until like later in life, I realized like, why don't I make beats? And the reason why I don't make beats, and by beats, I mean like instrumentals, right? Like melodies, drum beats, things of that nature. The reason I was so like never encroaching in that territory, and also feeling intimidated, was because of the fact that I didn't know music theory and things of that nature. So then when I started to realize the idea of AI is what you put in is what you get out, I started to realize like, oh, well, what if I put in some really cool like melodies, drum patterns, things of that nature that I personally enjoy, train kind of like this AI model, and have the ability to kind of have like my own co-producer to interact with, in terms of like having the fundamental building blocks of what a melody could be or drum beats could be and things of that nature. So for me, that's what I've been exploring and doing some research in for the last 2 years. Tons of tools out there that can help with this. There's a company named OpenAI that made a tool called Jukebox, which is super cool. You essentially can take a bunch of WAV files, like even like Drake WAV files, for example, mash it to this AI model, and think about what the idea of like Drake plus Nickelback could sound like, even though it's a really bad example. Those are the types of things you can do with Jukebox. Another one's called Magenta. It's an open source project. So tools like that, I could list off probably 5 or 6 more. The last 2 years doing a lot of research in those spaces. But the last point, and the reason why Aaron teed me up, is because something I'm super passionate about in the AI space is as we're earlier in this space, I wouldn't say, we're at the cutting edge. I feel like the cutting edge is kind of, that ship has kind of taken off. But as we're in the early stages still, I am becoming extremely passionate about doing what's right. And again, because what you put in is what you get out. These AI engineers, these data scientists, folks like that, they have the ability to control what is put in. So just want to be very vocal about the idea of ensuring that whatever data that you put in is your data, or you have the consent to use that data and things of that nature, simply because it's an unfortunate truth that people can create these crazy complex models without following an ethical route. And to me, that's the same concept as if you downloaded someone's song off of YouTube and uploaded it to Spotify and said it was your song. You're stealing someone else's IP and things of that nature. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's it's true. Like if you use Lander mastering, like it's an AI mastering the song, and if you put in a bad mix, you're not going to get a good master.
Right.
And that's going to be the same with a mastering engineer too, but like they can maybe do a bit more correction to help you. But yeah, it's very true. What you put in is what you get out with that stuff. And
yeah, it's a funny thought, because that's a kind of slightly different angle, but it's exactly true. A lot of times people think if you give someone, quote unquote crap, and you just give it to one persona in the music life cycle, they can like fix it up, pretty it up, and things of that nature. But it always starts with a fundamental beginning. Like you can add toppings later, but if the fundamental of the cake isn't good, it's not going to be good no matter what. So, yeah.
There are people that think that's the case about like, famous artists. Like, I mean, they're known for a reason. I mean, you think that they just had their work like crap and then somebody made it great. Like, no, they worked very hard. They actually know what they're doing. But on that note, I think it's really cool that, like the way you're all talking about this, like our different backgrounds and everything, I think it's so important that everybody it's good to know your strengths and to lean on those. Like we have some similarities, but also some differences. And I guess like as an instrumentalist, I sort of like to treat the music making and the technology process in the same way. Like I have this board in front of me because it's more like an instrument to me than just using everything that's software in the computer. I don't know. That's what I tell myself. So as far as AI is concerned, I think I was telling these guys before the panel started, getting into Focusrite makes a bundle of AI plugins called the Fast Bundle. It's the collective is what they call it. And there's a reverb, there's an EQ, there's a compressor, and there's one called Reveal. And they're AI, and they're so easy to use. And for me, I love producing music. I make music. I play everything in. I mic it all and I put it into the DAW, and then I make songs. And from there, I'm fortunate that, I have people close to me who are into audio and they love it and they've been good mentors to me. But I enjoy learning enough to get the job done, but I don't ever really have any desire to become a great mix engineer or a great tracking engineer. Like I like it. It's a fun part of the process, but I like these Focusrite plugins because it just saves me the time and I can get everything to sound very good, very fast. And when it shows you, it analyzes what you have and then it tells you what they think you should do to it. And it's a good learning tool, but it's just so fast. And it does a good job. I've tried actually, I put the EQ on my ukulele once and I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe I could make it sound better. And I started tweaking it and trying to adjust it. And I was like, no, I just made it worse. And I put it back to the way they had it. And I don't know, I like it. It's good for allowing me to focus on the music making part of things. And I enjoy doing a lot of different things in music, but that's a hat that I don't really want to wear. Like, I don't even want to try to tell anybody that I think I'm trying to be an engineer. I know enough to be dangerous, but it's just another tool for me to be able to do my job. So I really appreciate the quality and the time that it saves too.
Yeah, I like the way you phrase that a lot, Lisa. I'm kind of curious, kind of for both of you, Lisa and Anthony, like, do y'all ever feel like using AI in the music process is cheating at all?
I think it depends on how you use it. If you're using it to fuel inspiration and like it's letting you better express yourself. I don't think it is, but I think if it's some sort of I don't know, like you're just importing an AI loop and you just release that loop, I guess that would be cheating. I mean, it's hard to say, right? Like what is cheating though in music? That's what I would have to answer first. Because if every AI loop is different and you wouldn't have landed on that anyway, is it cheating? So I'll have to think on that. And then
I would say I agree with Anthony. It depends on how you use it. Like, for example, so I teach at an audio college. I don't show those students these plugins because they're really supposed to learn they're there to learn the process and to actually, dig in and understand things like EQ and compression. They need to. However, I do a lot of work with songwriters in songwriting communities. And I think, these plugins I'm speaking of, for example, these particular ones are great for people like that who want to be able to record their own songs at home, or people who are just looking to get their music to sound good so they can share it with people. I mean, you even release it, of course, but I guess that's the way I've used it. And I don't know a whole lot about what's out there as far as AI is concerned. I know there's so many possibilities like you've all talked about. So I personally want to learn more about it too, but I guess it depends on how you look at it. If it's a crutch to you, then I guess it's a crutch, but
yeah,
it can also be a
I like
tool.
that. I ask mainly because it's something I wrestle with a lot in terms of like my own point of view of it, because I don't think it's cheating at all. It's almost like, to me, it's like, Lisa, you have a lot of hardware in your room, which is super cool. I've never I think I've like touched a piano like 5 times in my life, but like when I think about the Logic like digital audio workstation, I've touched that keyboard like 1,000 times, you know what I mean? So like when I start to think about it from that point of view, it's like, oh, that's not cheating. It's a different way to make music. So that's kind of like my perspective right now on the AI space. But I'm always curious what others are thinking, because I'm sure, anytime new technology is introduced, there are people in the room that are like, oh, this is weird, this is cheating, this is whatever. So it's cool to hear that you two are as open as I would think you would be. So
as long as the core of yourself is expressed in the music that you're putting out there and you used AI to get to that place, I think that's amazing. Like, it makes it more accessible to anyone that might not have the opportunity to learn that much about music if they're just getting started and they want to express themselves and they're confused, and AI is helping them do that. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Right. Yeah.
One thing. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's not my job. Go on.
Okay. Somebody mentioned in the chat asking about new tech instruments, and I guess this probably falls under that category. As somebody I'm learning Ableton right now, I'm teaching a course with it, so I'm really desperately trying to stay a few steps ahead of what I need to know. But as far as functioning with Ableton, I like it a lot. It's a lot different than Logic. I'm more familiar with Logic, but Ableton, if you're familiar with the push, it's an instrument in itself. It's a tech instrument, of course, but it maps to Ableton so well. And my husband has one, and I'm looking forward to digging into it as I learn the DAW, but that's one of many things, like it's got the buttons on it and the knobs, and you play it in real time, like an instrument. I don't know if anybody on this Zoom call right now is familiar with the push, but I can't speak very, very intelligently about it. I don't know enough about it, but it's a very powerful tool, and that's worth looking into.
No, I was like flashing it in front of the camera as you were saying that. I have one here. Yeah, one of the best things I've ever purchased. Like if you want an out of DAW experience, but you're still in the DAW, that's the way to go. Like you can really generate ideas extremely fast with the session view workflow, where you're able to kind of like just set 4-bar phrases and build and not think too much about a linear progression. You're just getting ideas down and you're filling in these blocks. And then once you have those ideas down, you can kind of like step away, come back to the computer, and then drag those ideas into a linear form. And so you can really separate the creative process. And a lot of anxiety I find for new music makers, and I still go through this too, is like you open up the DAW and then there's a blank screen. And it's just like you're starting your next project. And like I'm a person where I have to finish what I started before I start something new. Like I have to finish it, even if I hate it. I just make sure I finish it and then get to the next thing. But yeah, just generating ideas with Ableton, with even without the push. I mean, the push is great because you have a tactile interface, but yeah, it's great. One of the best things.
I have like lots of questions now, rolling with this, but it's interesting. There's this question from Sean Petchy, I hope I say your name correctly, saying, do you know of any agreed upon practices for how you credit AI collaborations? And I will get to the rest of this, to this question, but I found myself asking, how comfortable do you feel with the idea of the AI as your collaborator, or like, you know, on the spectrum of collaborator to tool? How do you feel about that?
The way that I see it, and like personally, I'll drop my Instagram handle only because it kind of dovetails to those questions. One, I'm currently working on a tool, a VST, to be hopefully released in the next 2 months to help with the actual MIDI generation that's powered by AI. So yeah, if you're interested in interacting with it, hopefully, again, be released in a month and a half or two. But the overall point is there, I started to think through like, like how would I want to consider artists that use this plugin in order to make their own music? Like, what about the credits and things of that nature? But if y'all are familiar with this tool called Splice, it's one of the biggest, you know, music tools I feel like in the industry right now. But I feel like their model is probably the way to do it in this space. I don't think there is a right answer yet, so I'm just kind of like talking off the cusp. But I like the way that Splice does it. In a sense, if Splice gives you the ability to, as a producer, I could create like 15 different loops that I upload to this tool, and each time you download the loop, it's like, you know, 1 credit. But when you download that credit, that loop is technically yours to use in your song. You can embed it wherever you want, and it's and you don't have to credit me on that song, right? You own it now because I got paid through Splice. So that's the kind of angle I think it might start taking. I can't imagine, Eminem featuring AI model ever be a thing. So if an AI model helped with the output and the performance of things in that nature, you know, it may be at the bottom, you know, where like I know a lot of times the executive producers and things of that nature are like called out on the back of the album or whatnot. So maybe something there, but I doubt it.
Yeah,
MJ,
I mean,
I'm just laughing because you made this reference earlier, how you're like, I feel like there's someone really with me in the studio. Now, no, not a person.
yeah, exactly. That's fair.
yeah, I think usually the creators of these technologies are licensing the technology, so you don't have to credit them on any songs. But there is something interesting with royalty-free loops in particular, and I've heard this at Lander, and I heard it recently with Splice. You have to be careful sometimes if someone uses a loop and they don't modify it at all and they release that song, and that loop is a core element of the song. There are some legal issues there because they've licensed the song with that loop, and now that loop's a core piece of that song. And so if someone goes and uses that loop in another song, then they can get flagged. And then there's a whole thing with lawyers and stuff that you have to go through. But I've heard of that happening. But in terms of the AI, I would assume that you're just licensing the tech. Different, yeah. It's the loops that are royalty free to begin with. But when someone releases a song with a loop, that's like the core identity of the song, and that's copywritten into their song, and then it will get flagged by the robots that scan the songs on the internet and stuff like that. If that makes sense.
I could go on with the next. Well, I guess it's just I can't not read the rest of Sean's question because it's just interesting as a thought exercise. Would it be the songwriter as the musician, AI as the instrument, or would, like, I guess it goes as this core question is like, is the AI a consciousness, or is it an instrument, or is it like a plugin? So it's a really fun thought exercise. It seems like everyone here, like, it's so rare that I talk to a group of people that are so confident about their positions on AI and, like, you know, and like even well versed in AI tools and stuff like that. And as this is like a talk about DIY and difference and stuff like that, like what advice would you give to someone who's like utterly intimidated and is like, I'm not me, I'm not that nerdy person, I'm not like an AI person. Like what advice would you give them?
Are you talking about like music making in general or like just making art?
Well, it could be either. I mean, sometimes the line is very blurry between art and music.
Or yeah, so I guess I use the term art broadly, but yeah, anybody who's so if they're terrified about the thought of AI, you're kind of asking like what would you tell somebody like as far as using AI goes or just in general?
I don't know, just like I'm thinking to myself, like if there's some people that are here looking at y'all as role models, like what's the message to the people?
I'm
to
always
like
gonna,
how
yeah.
do they learn more?
I'm always going to say it's really important just to know how you like to do things. And you'll always meet other people who like to do things in different ways. I mean, just the four of us here on this panel alone, like we have so many different ways we like to do things that are completely opposite of each other, but that's great. And then we all make music and it's fun and we like it. And what's the reason you make music in the first place? It's probably because you get some sort of fulfillment and feeling of reward from it. And then, other people like you are going to hear your music and connect with you. And that's the whole point, isn't it? You want to make something that people who think like you, they have something out there and it makes them feel good too. And I think however you get to that point, whatever works for you is the way to go. And if that's AI, great, use AI if you can see it as a tool. But if you play instruments, then make music with instruments. And you don't have to collaborate with other people, but maybe collaboration is the key for you. Finding other like-minded people that bring something to the table that, learning from other people who are similar than you, but also different from you. I think just being really open-minded, having your ear to the ground. I think things like this panel, communities of people, there's so much information out there. And I think for better or worse, the internet is a thing. And we have not always had such open communication across the globe. And I think sometimes that's a really great thing. Sometimes we run into the problems from computers and technology and, smartphone addictions and stuff. But there are some really great things about it too. Like the connection to other people is so great nowadays. I think it's just important to really know what it is in your soul that makes you excited about music. And you can find the people that resonate with that.
That's awesome, Lisa. I actually that kind of spiraled a thought for me in terms of like I think I actually have an answer for at least my opinion to the AI copyright stuff. And essentially, it is think about any musical tool that we don't give credit to, right? That makes things better, like auto-tune, for example. Auto-tune literally turns a voice into the ability to, hopefully sound better to the ear or whatnot. But we're not crediting auto-tune on songs, you know what I mean? Like we don't put T-Pain featuring auto-tune. So I think if it's a tool that is enabling you to make more music, either faster or better or whatever, I don't think it's necessarily going to get credit, but to the point of licensing, that's a different story. So anyway, that's that. But to the actual question of like, I think it's the actual question of like how, I guess, advice for making music or getting into technology or whatever. It's the same advice I would give myself or anyone for anything in life. If you care about it enough, just set aside hours, every week, a few hours, maybe 2 or 3 a night if you can afford the time, and just do your own research. See what types of things interest you and things of that nature. Because between us, like I had no interest in AI at all 3 years ago. And then I realized, oh, like, what if I could use AI to get better at music? And then before you know it, like 2 years later, I now feel like I'm well researched in the AI space and making music with AI now. And that simply all came out of like chasing my curiosity and allowing myself to put in the actual hours to allow that to happen. Because the last thing you want to happen is saying one day I want to get into, like I have a lot of friends that are this way, like, oh, I want to get into producing music, but I got to wait until this is right. Or I got to wait until like X, Y, and Z happen before I can get into music. Like making music is so accessible today that like, I have a mentee that's based in Washington, D.C. He's 12 years old. We're using a free DAW that's online based, and we're making music together, virtually, and it's literally $0. So I just think like, not to be that Gary Vee kind of person, but like, put the excuses aside, allow yourself to have hours, per week to get into it and stay curious.
Cool,
I
cool.
think Anthony mentioned a few questions ago something about, was it Anthony? You were talking about like making something or being hard on yourself, and then it's like you have to allow yourself to like make something that maybe isn't your best, and then you move on from it. Like I think it's huge. Like especially with songwriting, it's like you have to write the crappy songs to get to the good songs. Was that Anthony? Or was that?
I said something like that, but I agree.
Yeah. It's so
And
easy.
sometimes like I'll sit down to it's create a schedule like MJ said, like and set this time aside, and like sometimes I'll sit down and I'll like listen to what I have, and then I'll try some stuff, and it just goes horrible, and then I'm like, okay, you know what, today's not the day, and then the next day I sit down, same routine, but I have the best session, and there's no controlling that because we're human. It's just you have to. It's consistency is key, and then keeping a consistent schedule and habit is just the way you do it. And like you said, MJ, people are telling themselves a story. When I have this, I'll do that, and you see a lot of people with a lot of gear doing that. Like, oh, once I get this piece of gear or this plugin, then I'll be able to do this. And I used to do that to myself too. Like, oh, once I have that, then it's going to be over. Like, I'm going to be so successful. And that could be the case with AI too. I haven't even checked out those tools ever, MJ, that you said before. I'm going to check them out to see if they help me get past those hurdles when I sit down and I can't get past the block that I'm in. Maybe there's something that helps. And I think if something like that helps me, then I'm going to use it. So
I have a question that's sort of a fun thought exercise. I don't know how this is going to go. What do you think would be the absolute worst thing that could happen to the music industry with AI?
Yeah, Anthony touched on this earlier, and I fully agree. The key to music is the core of humanity in terms of like who you are as a person should be in music no matter what. So I think, that's a very easy one actually for me in terms of like, I've thought about this before, but the tooling exists now that if you are tech savvy enough and you are musically inclined enough, you could probably have an AI thing that outputs an entire song from start to finish, where, as a human, you no longer even need to really even give your like perspective on like changing the melodies or changing anything about the song or the arrangement or whatnot. So that to me feels really scary and like an ugly world, because like we think about this idea of like industry plants and things of that nature. Like at least the industry plants are people, when you think about the idea of like industry plants now being able to be like all AI driven and computer driven in a highly capitalistic world, that scares me a lot. And that's why I like to be extremely vocal about it too. Cause like, as all of us, being kind of like more thought leaders in the space of AI and music, the more that we can connect with each other and like talk about these things, hopefully we can help, prevent the bad actors from fully committing to something like that, even though it's probably coming.
it's an interesting question. And I'm trying to think like, what's the worst? I think the worst thing that could happen is like a supercomputer that writes the best, most catchy, formulaic pop songs, and no one can tell the difference between if that's written by a human or not. But I still think even if that happened, people would be more attracted to the subtle differences of individuals and how they're able to express themselves. I think we would come back to that, because that's what makes Radiohead sound like Radiohead, and like an AI can model that and replicate it. But I don't know if it will ever be able to capture that spark that makes us human attracted to other humanistic kind of qualities, I guess.
That's a good point. And like, I just want to like interject for a second to add, I love coffee in terms of like every morning I'm doing like this pour over Chemex process. And it's an interesting point because like whenever I get coffee from Akira, it gets coffee, it gets the job done, and I'll take it if nothing else is around. But I can definitely tell the difference between like hand poured coffee made with love. So I feel like there's lots of analogies like that out there. But yeah, no, I agree. I think for some audiences, it may be good enough to get the job done. But I agree. I think we'll be able to tell the difference.
I agree with that as well. I think you're right there. It kind of reminds me of, I've heard these conversations in the drummer community, like drummers talking about like, well, drum machines and like computers, the DAWs and stuff, like programmed drums, it's going to replace us. It's like the drummer is never going to be replaced. I mean, maybe for some gigs, but like it's just so fun. Like you'll always be able to play your drums.
Right.
We'll always be able to make music. I think the worst thing for me would be that somehow there's like no ability to feel things from music anymore. Like I think that's a lot of people's thing that they go to when they're feeling emotions and things like that. And it would really suck if somehow that wasn't a thing anymore. But yeah, I think I agree with you all on that.
Yeah, it's a funny thought, Lisa, on the idea of like drummers being replaced, because I just pictured like a concert and I was like, how the heck would that even happen without like an actual drummer and things of that nature? So
I've seen like the metal bands. I've seen metal bands that will play like with click tracks now and like have like those backing samples and sometimes even with a bass track. And like that seems to be more socially acceptable now.
that's wild. I did not even realize that actually.
Or like, I don't know if you know FKJ, but he's like I think he does the Ableton thing and it's a one-man show and he sequences everything. And so he's going from instrument to instrument.
That's fair. Yeah.
It can really be a great creative tool. I mean, it's its own type of thing for sure. I think, you see that on stage. I think a lot of it has to do with probably budget. I mean, a lot of artists, maybe they're going on low budget tours, but they have an audience and then they can bring electronics and they don't have to have a seat in the van and you don't have to feed them. So I get it. But the show dynamic with live people is just a really special thing.
Right.
So,
I feel like the drummer is such a core piece of live music.
Yeah, just the feel. It just brings a different feel to the whole thing.
And as a cruise ship performer, like you gotta know that. Like those are some really high level live performances.
Well, I mean, like we did the live stuff, and then but the show band like with dancers and stuff was all to a click track, and there were samples playing in the back too. So, and depending on the mix engineer, it could sound very good or not.
You're right. The funny thing I'll say to that is,
I just want to interject for a brief moment. I have messaged the audience to say it is a great time for you to come up with questions because I need to give the audience a chance to say hello if they would like to add their own thoughts about accessibility, difference, technology. It's sometimes difficult to formulate a question, but now is the time to just put it in the chat if you would like to ask something. Otherwise, we're just going to continue geeking out. Geek on.
Cool. Yeah, the one thing I was going to say real quick was on that drummer live kind of debate or whatever we want to call it is I've only done like three or four of my own concerts before, and I'll never forget the difference between when I had like someone DJing just like normally, just like playing the drums, the instrumentals through the speakers, versus when I got an actual drummer on stage to join me. It was actually a night and day difference in terms of like the level of energy that I had as a performer. And it's funny as I say this out loud because it's the first time I connect the dots. Like I'm a proponent and an advocate for AI in music. I think it's cool for that to happen. So it is funny to see, like for me, it's a night and day experience in terms of like having that person on stage with me.
I think a big thing too, I mean, it kind of ties into this whole discussion too, I guess like technology and things like that, but people being replaced by technology, and a big thing about like opportunity and, those of us who are, underrepresented in some way. I think, maybe I'm generalizing this too much, but I just feel like if you can treat people with kindness and you can have a good attitude, I think you can go into any situation and make the place a little bit better and, contribute good energy and be pleasant to be around. And I don't think you're ever going to get your job replaced by technology. I think, whether you are, whatever your gender, your race, religion, or anything, any possible barriers, I think, again, finding the people that really understand you and appreciate you, everybody's out there. And there are situations where maybe you're best for the job and maybe you're not. I mean, But I think I don't, the conversation of technology replacing people kind of reminded me of just the general idea of, well, would you hire you?
Right.
Yeah, it's a great point. And also this idea of like, if the technology took everyone's jobs, like, I don't even understand. Like, I mean, it would be like the opposite of diversity to the max. Like, there would just actually be no identity. Yikes. I guess that like I think that we kind of answered some questions in the chat during the conversations. I know that some of you all were great at like looking at the chat and paying attention. I did not miss any. Thank you. Well, I feel like this is like a really interesting place to end the conversation, because rather than letting it drag on, like, I hope that we've all had our chance to say our things. I will invite you all to have a closing message for everyone here. People in the chat, if we love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being our audience and listening to us. I hope that we gave you lots of great things to think about. Closing messages from everyone. Great, thanks, Ryan. Anthony, do you have any final words for everybody?
It was great to meet everyone here. It felt like such a short time, in an hour. So that it was nice to be a part of a conversation like this. I don't, it's not often that I get to do this. And so really appreciate Colin reaching out and meeting you guys as well. Lots of cool stuff. I'd love to connect with anyone that wants to work together on music. I don't do enough collaborations.
Put that in the chat. Put your contact info in the chat.
Oh, sure.
So we can connect with you. MJ?
Yeah, very similar sentiment to Anthony. I extremely grateful to the Byta team for reaching out and hosting this. And Lisa and Anthony, really cool talking to you two as well on this stuff. I kid you not, like, this is like pretty much all that's on my mind these days as far as like the world of AI and music. So I agree, the hour went very quickly, but always happy to continue the conversation if y'all are ever interested, and anyone obviously that's here as well. But yeah, appreciate the time. This was very fun.
Lisa, you're gonna drop some wisdom. I'm just joking.
Trick everybody into thinking I have some good stuff to say. I think one big thing that I think about a lot is it's really important to I guess I said it before, lean on your strengths, but like I think it's important, and I feel like I just realized this in my life like 3 months ago. You can enjoy something and do it, and you don't have to be good at it. And if, you know, whether it's music or using new gear, like for me, it's knowing how in the world to operate this room that I work in, or, you know, like technology stuff. Like, I like it, and it's okay that I'm not a rock star, and I can go to NAMM, and I can go to Summer NAMM, and I can go to gear conferences, and it's okay if I don't sit there and talk the talk with everybody. You know, I'm going there to learn. And I think in general, if you just always keep your mind open to learning and accept the fact that you don't have to try to trick people into thinking, or even yourself into thinking, that you're a pro at everything. You can be a beginner at stuff, and you can still very much be a pro at what it is that you do. And I think that's made a big difference for me in taking myself less seriously, because I just get in my own way sometimes. You all know how that goes, I'm sure. So, but yeah, opportunities like this are really great. I love getting to know people like all of you and talking about this stuff, and it's really inspiring to me. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Well, everybody have a wonderful evening. Take care of yourself and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. You can give an extended bye-bye wave. Bye.
See you guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.